So if I'm going to do the shop, all I need now is a bad haircut.
First up is Mr. John Belger on the 2017 chip seal program contract.
Good evening, everybody. On June 2nd, we had a bid opening for chip seal program for 2017. Harbor Construction was the only responsive bidder. Their price was $105,833.70. After looking back through this action item a little bit, I wanted to clarify a few items. The numbers that you see for previous program years are the actual cost of the program. The one that you see for 2017 includes the 5% contingency that we oftentimes include in contracts to cover miscellaneous items that come up. So without the contingency, you're looking at a lower amount. It's closer to, it's $100,739, I believe. So I wanted to clarify that. Also, you'll notice that it increased some from last year. If you remember last year, we piggybacked off of Lenexa's contract for chip seal, which kind of gained us a quantity or economy of scale due to the amount that they did. Our chip seal program kind of hovers around the 35 to 40,000 square yard mark. They were closer to the 400,000 square yard mark, so that drove that price down by about 20 cents per square yard. So you notice that price has kind of jumped a little bit. And looking at some other bid tabs that opened recently, that price seems in line with the other ones from Rowan Park and Leavenworth. So we did double check on those. We did include that section of Dearborn North of 51st Street that we discussed at the April meeting. So that is in the program. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have regarding this item.
Go ahead.
I do have some concerns that I've already expressed about the increase, because it's like it's 33% higher than our 2014 bid, and that's per mile or per lane mile. And I understand it goes up a little bit each year. That's understandable, but it's also like 20, and last year I know Laura was telling me we got a little better volume price because we were hooked up with Lenexa, but it's 25% higher than last year, and that to me, I think they knew that they were going to be the only bidder or something. That seems like a really large increase. I don't know how they justify that. But.
You know, there are a couple other cities around here that bid that same program. Rowan Park was one. They had 2 responsive bidders. Our program's actually less than Rowan Park's. You know, the other cities that you see around town that would be comparable. Well, I say comparable. Overland Park bids theirs. They actually bid theirs in 2 different programs. They bid the north side and the south side of town because their program's so big. The other contractor that we typically see bid this is Vance Brothers. The reason Vance Brothers didn't bid it was because they got both of Overland Park's programs, and
You got so many trucks.
right, they're going to be spending most of their time over there. There are other contractors that are kind of scattered about. There's one over in Hannibal, Missouri, and there's one up in northeast Kansas. But I just think that the quantity that we have doesn't entice them to come mobilize all the way down here and do that. I'd be happy to crunch the numbers a little bit more. And looking at that today, there was a street last year, and I don't know if lane miles is...
I don't think you need to crunch the numbers, John. I think we need to ask them if they can take another look at it, see it, and explain to them. That's 18% jump in a year sounds a little...
The only other thing that I noticed today and looking back through that, I don't know if lane miles necessarily gives you the best comparison as far as dollar per.
Yeah.
Because when you look at Barkley that we did last year, north of Johnson Drive, that street's 40 feet wide. So I think what I might do is go back and look at more of a per square yard or per square
I see what
foot
you're saying.
number. Because that lane mile doesn't necessarily quantify that wide of a street. Given that that street's still, a 2 or 3 lane road, it doesn't take into account that extra width. So,
Remind me who the contractor was that put the chip seal down at the cul-de-sac on 52nd.
it was Harbor.
Who?
It was same contractor.
The quantity, the cost is element 1. The quality is becoming element 2, and that's surfacing.
Well, and that was a question that we had asked them when we started to see that unraveling earlier this spring. They've come out and looked at it, and then what they determined is the applicator on the back of the oil truck, there's a radar that detects how fast that oil comes out. And if you'll notice, on the end of cul-de-sacs and on corners where they slowed down, it over-applied the oil. So that radar on the back of that machine wasn't working.
That's
Which,
their problem. though, not
right,
the city's.
and they're on the hook to fix that.
Do we have a time frame for that?
I don't have the time frame. I call them every other day to remind them that I'm still thinking about it.
And see, to me, if somebody's really interested in bidding another job, they'd be on that real quick. Because that doesn't make me happy at all. Their
totally
response
understand.
time and everything was, it's not you, John, it's them.
Right. Well, and in talking to them, I understand why they're backed up due to some, weather, and, they said that, to be able to come back and blend that back in the right way, conditions have to be right to do that. So they're aware of it. Like I said, I remind them often that I'm still thinking about them.
And I totally get it. If it's a contract that's gone by the wayside, you just have to go back. But now they're bidding again,
Right.
my ears are perked up, and that doesn't go over well, because
And I'm not going to say in defense of them, but I will say, previous years we haven't had this issue. It's never been an issue. So I guess I'm a little more understanding what they're trying to say. But again, I agree that it needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed fast if you're interested in working with
to me,
us.
that's the caveat. You
Sure.
want the next job, you better get the other one done right.
How many years in a row have they done it?
Since 2014.
They did do it 14.
Mhm.
What other cities use Harbor?
Roland Park currently has a contract with them.
This their first year? Or they use them last year?
This is Roland Park's first year. They've done work in Lenexa. They've done work in Overland Park. They've done work in, there's quite a few places that have done this.
There wasn't any opportunity to partner with any other cities around Roland Park or wherever else to get any kind of...
I asked
savings
Roland
there?
Park if they had included that cooperative agreement in their contract, and they had not. So we ended up going ahead and bidding it ourselves. And I think we benefited from that because we actually saw a little bit of savings over Roland Park's program.
Just touch on Lenexa and what Lenexa not having a chip seal program this year.
Lenexa did not have a chip seal program this year. They are experimenting with a residential ultra-thin bonded surface, which is a lot of people have seen it. It's typically a thin overlay that they use on highways. Last year, McDonald Construction got a machine that was capable to go on the residential streets and perform the same type of application. It's called UBAS, but it's basically between a chip seal and a mill and overlay, both cost-wise and work-wise. So, I'm talking to Steve Mustaine. He said that he's going to try that and see how that goes. And we'll talk next about the street inventory. And I think an important thing, and without getting too far ahead of myself, one of the important things that's going to come out of that inventory is what's worked, what hasn't, what we've done, and what our options are moving forward. So I think come fall, we're going to kind of start from scratch street program and maybe attack that in a little bit different way.
But by then, we will have had all these streets repaired, right?
For this year,
Yeah, so, I mean, if we have problems, we're,
Well, the problem at hand is you're the public works director,
Mhm.
and I know how you interface with people. You're kind, you always give people an opportunity to, you're calling every other day or 2 or 3 times a week, and they're trying to get a new contract. That's not good contract management on their part. They haven't even fixed the old
Well,
problem.
like I said, I've told them, this is priority number 1, to get these past streets fixed above and beyond anything before we even talk about anything moving forward. So that needs to happen. I understand the conditions need to be right. We do have a 2-year maintenance bond, so if it comes to that, then I'll call in the bond and we'll have somebody else come fix it.
what's our timeline here on this chip seal program? And we gotta get this done this month,
We would have,
I mean,
in
through
order,
the council this month so we can get it done?
yes.
Historically, how many bidders have we had?
Typically only 1 or 2.
So there's only 2 people in town that do this work, or we're not big enough, or what is the obstacle that people don't want to bid on this job?
A combination. There's not a lot of people that do this work, and our contract is relatively small. Like I said, Overland Park in the past has had people come in from out of state to do theirs, just because it's enough work to keep them busy all summer.
But didn't you indicate that one year when they did that, that contractor couldn't keep up and they had to call in one of the locals that typically
Well,
bids on the other jobs?
There was a contractor that came in out of town and found out that he bid off way more than he could chew, and leaned on another contractor to come in and kind of save that job.
So are other cities not willing to enter into a cooperative agreement? Since we're small, we're going to struggle to get bidders, and we were able to hook onto Lenexa, which is a smart move. Do we not have cooperation from other cities to continue to do this? Because this puts us in a very vulnerable position. We have a contractor whose some of the surfaces are starting to show problems. They're the only bidder.
They know.
And we got to do it now. So it kind of boxes us in a corner. And if they're not willing to take care of the problems they've had in the past, timely now, when they have another contract pending, I'm really afraid that once they get this contract, how are they going to treat this?
Right.
who does Fairway use?
I don't think Fairway does chip seal.
And Leewood doesn't do chip seal.
I don't see why.
So Lenexa usually does Overland Park, Woodland Park, those are us, four cities.
Edgerton has, Leavenworth,
The whole idea of cooperative is really smart. I mean, that seems to, I guess my question still is that not a viable option to network with those other cities? They're in the same situation. They're going to get a better price, more quantity that you can give a contractor. So it benefits them and benefits us. Have we tried that option?
I think in the past, we've used Lenexa because Lenexa has the quantity to get people in and get them interested in that cooperative agreement because it's, a decent quantity. I think there's an opportunity to work with Roland Park to combine our 2 programs. And I've talked to Jose about that. This is kind of his first year at this, so he kind of wanted to kind of do his own thing and get his feet wet kind of to, how it's going to work at Roland Park. I think there is an opportunity there. If Lenexa does chip seal next year, I think that's always a viable alternative. A lot of times with Overland Park, theirs is just too big to be able to. I think with as big as their program is, whatever contractor tackles that is going to have their hands full with their program, and potentially ours would get swept under the rug or kind of pushed off to the end when it's not really optimal to do that. When you get too late in fall, it gets too cold. But I think there are opportunities there.
Who did 67th Street? Was that Harvard Brothers for Overland Park?
That was Vance Brothers for Overland Park.
No wonder. Good. That's really a good road.
Overland Park uses a different spec also.
Really?
Yeah, they use a red trap rock. I know that they haven't been, they ran into issues on the south side of Overland Park here 2 years ago. And like I said, coming into last year, I had no qualms about, the quality of anything that Harbor had done up to date. I think that unfortunately they had a malfunction that affected these roads. And I think we started finding out about it now, and I think that they're willing to fix it, but I think that they need to
Well, these questions have
be
didn't
timely.
surface just now, right? These questions surfaced months ago.
It's been about a month and a half.
I thought some of these questions came up in March and April.
I've been aware of them. We went up and fixed or had to cover exposed oil on 52nd Street about a month ago.
Maybe.
Well, I think we're kind of over a barrel here.
We don't have any other choices.
That's-
Do we have any other choices right now at this point?
What are our options?
Are there any other streets that are having the same problem that 52nd Street is having?
I would say 52nd Street is the worst out of all of them. There are a couple areas that's showing some oil on some radiuses where the problem is when you slow the equipment down, the radar's supposed to slow the oil down. Well, with that equipment malfunction, the oil never slowed down. So it over-applied the oil in the corners where they slow down. And on the cul-de-sacs where when you're coming around the cul-de-sac, you're not on a straight run and you slow down to make the
Right.
turn, that's when the oil got over-applied. But there are a couple other areas, like I said, not to the extent that 52nd Street is now, that needs some attention.
What options do we have, John? I mean, you've heard the concern,
Right.
so what options, what are our choices?
Well, I think the overarching concern is whatever has gone bad needs to get fixed first.
Right, I think there's a couple. One is the bidding situation, which is a bad situation, having to accept one bid, which then, and then the second thing is, and I'll take your word that prior years they've had good work, so that's good, but they need to fix the problems before we give them another contract.
As far as the bid goes, I can gather that information up from other bids that have opened, just as a comparison.
I don't know what the legalities are on this thing once you've had a bid, but
You can reject, I mean, you
Yeah,
can
you
always
can
reject
reject
the bid. The
Can
question
we-
is, if you reject it and then go back out,
I
you're
mean,
likely to get it.
can we make a phone call, not go back
No,
out and
I
bid,
think we can
Can we
absolutely,
make a phone call to them and say, look, council has concerns about a couple things. One, a pretty sizable increase. Would you guys take another look at the bids that you do? And second, they want this stuff fixed before they let another
right.
contract.
Absolutely, we can make
Sure.
those calls, and I think we can also then, come back to you with some options for future, maybe this year's program and definitely for future programs and looking at, are there other cities where we can come up with these cooperative agreements, and maybe we push
And then-
that a little.
And then could we get some kind of, or right now, would we want to say, okay, well, we're going to have to take it to council one way or the other. Either they're going to say, yeah, we can, oh yeah, well, we did bid that maybe a little high, we'll come down $6,300 or whatever, which is good. But if they don't, if they say, no, that's the bid, then we pretty much got to approve it now, either as it's bid or amended, with whatever you guys can
Well, if you
negotiate with them.
took it to council not on consent, I think that would give us time to make those phone calls, get a firm date on when the stuff that needs repaired is going to get repaired, and give us some time to to discuss or look at other information.
Yeah, and
regarding cost.
you may be exactly right when you look at the square footage or whatever.
I like that.
You may come back and say, hey, it's only a 10% increase.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's
That
something,
made sense when you said that.
and like, I just looked at it briefly today, but, you know, just in looking at it, trying to vet that out, and I just noticed that he has some streets that were awful wide.
But I'd still make the phone call to them, and I wouldn't mention square footage. I'd say, hey, the council's looking at lane miles and the cost, and
Sure.
about it, and have them go back and say, yeah, okay, we'll amend our bid.
Absolutely.
And let them know we're not gonna rebid it. At this
Well,
point,
no,
we're not looking to reissue the bid.
I wouldn't tell them that.
Huh?
I wouldn't tell them that.
Well, they probably know it anyway.
I just can't believe there's more companies.
We're not threatening to, I don't wanna make them think we're threatening.
Right, we don't want to-
So
What
that,
do you? Let's do that. Well, I don't like my street.
They've gotten a lot of business from the city,
yeah.
and they'll continue if they continue with good work, honest effort,
And they're the
and
only bidder.
relying on the right other work to return. They need to call you back,
I
John.
don't like our street.
I
That's
will,
crap.
Absolute crap.
I'd be happy to make a phone call and discuss both, you know, both issues.
And mine's been in for 2 years.
Any other discussion? So it sounds like that we're going to take it to council, but not on the consent agenda, is that correct?
Right, and you may have more information back by then, because that's 2 weeks.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah.
Someone in particular.
Right.
Yeah, I recommend we take it to council tomorrow on consent.
Thank you.
That way if we don't hear back too, we can always just move on from them and figure out something else. We don't have to approve it.
All right, number 2 is the Stantec street inventory contract. Again, John Belger.
Thank you. Stantec is a company that does overall condition indexing for cities. They use a van that they drive around, and what that van does is it has lasers on it. It measures the imperfections in the pavement and also measures the rideability of the street. We have also asked them to inventory our curbs and sidewalks and also give them a condition rating. If you all remember, we had entered into a contract with Cartograph, which is our asset maintenance software, to perform a similar service. Cartograph called us a couple months after we entered into that contract and said that they were changing imagery providers, which would essentially double that contract. So at that time, we decided that we would cancel that contract and look for other options, which is what we got a hold of Stantec. Stantec has done work for Roland Park, Fairway, and Kansas City, Missouri. They will also have bids out for Edgerton and actually another portion of Kansas City, Missouri. This kind of information is critical to us. The last time that we did an overall condition update was pavement only, and that was back in 2008, which is what we based our street program on. There's a lot of things that changed over the course of 9 years. I think that this information is going to be really important to us to see what we, where we were versus where we've come to, and see kind of how our overall street programs improved the condition of our streets. With that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Fits in the budget.
It does.
Good idea. Take that to council.
It's savings over the
It's
Cartograph
like
contract,
13
about
grand, right?
13,000.
Yeah.
The big difference between the two contracts was Cartograph was basically going to put it into our maintenance software for us. All that information would translate right in. We kind of just have it right there. With Stantec, they're going to provide us with GIS and Excel deliverables, and we'll have to put that information in ourselves, which is fine.
You want on the consent or the non-consent?
I think it ought to be on non-consent. I think people like to know that we're checking our streets and curbs and sidewalks. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. We'll take it to council on the consent item then.
It's probably also worth mentioning that.
Or non-consent, pardon me.
We saved 13 grand, yeah. It's a good call.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the salt contract. Again, John Belger.
It's the John Show. Every 3 years, we go out and solicit bids for rock salt, which is what we use to de-ice roads in the wintertime.
What winter?
Exactly. Over the past 3 years, we haven't ordered any salt because what we had on reserve in our dome basically carried us through. Currently, that dome, which holds 1,800 tons of salt, is approximately half full. We went out to bid, and the numbers per ton from our last bid had actually gone down due to the fact that nobody was buying any salt. So we actually saw a savings of approximately $5 per ton for that rock salt. When you start talking about 1,000 tons of salt, that's a pretty big savings. We're going to look to basically restock our salt dome this year due to that savings. The good thing about salt is it doesn't go bad.
How much did that deplete from 2016 to 2017?
I have to look.
We threw out a little bit.
We track it. The big user of salt is when you get ice.
Yeah.
Because plows wouldn't be any good. I always tell everybody I'd rather have a 12 inches of snow than half an inch of ice, just because it's so hard to deal with. But we had some icing this year, so they used probably 300 or 400 tons over 3 events, just to get everything to break up and go away. But like I said, it was at capacity about 3 years ago, and we've used approximately half in those 3 years.
I recommend we take that on consent if you want to.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll take it to council on consent.
Just on my recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 4 will be the incentive, thanks John. Will be the incentive program to encourage the removal of existing pole signs or pole sign structures. Laura Smith.
Thank you. And I do want to just comment because we changed up the format a little bit, and of course we don't have anybody that is a member of the general public, but one of our main reasons was to say, because when we were sitting in a square, often either council or the staff had their back to the folks in the audience and kind of just felt a little bit disconnected. So we're going to play around maybe with layout and format, and would really appreciate your feedback on what you think about that. Anyway, back in April we talked about the fund balance in the MCDB fund. And we made some preliminary recommendations, one of those being to set aside $15,000. There was about $45,000 in total in the MCBD fund balance, to use $15,000 to create a program to incentivize maybe early removal or removal of existing pole signs or pole sign structures. So originally, when we talked about revisions to the sign code, we had talked about a pole sign amortization process, and ultimately that didn't end up becoming part of the code, but I know several council members still expressed an interest in maybe getting rid of pole signs sooner rather than later. So we looked at some other programs around the country and created a program. It's actually just a reimbursement program, not a matching program, that would provide up to $3,000 per applicant on a first-come, first-served basis to look at taking down those detached non-conforming signs. So we'd be happy to answer any questions. We've recommended $15,000, as I said, so that could serve up to 5 applicants.
Or more if they didn't have $3,000.
Or more if they didn't have $3,000 in expenses.
I think it's a great idea, good plan. I like the way you guys drafted it up.
And it would cover expenses for removal and installation of the new sign?
Yes.
Yes, of a new conforming sign, yes.
But it might not cover all the
It
expenses.
may not cover all of it, but
Sure.
yes.
And that's what I was just going to ask. What is the cost? Do you know what average cost to say Freddie's Gas Company, or what are those? What does it something like that cost?
He asked Acme Sign, because we have a connection with them, to just give us a ballpark estimate.
I can't hear you, what'd you say?
Acme Sign told us it'd be, depending on the size, but for a to max out our sign code, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 for a new sign. So keep in mind, this program could be used in conjunction with the Business Improvement Grant, which also gives you money for new conforming signs, so.
Okay,
you double
thank
dip.
you. Take it,
Anybody else?
council,
Take it,
but I don't think it ought to be on the consent.
shake it, bake.
All right. For council, non-consent. All right. Item number 5 is the contract for the construction and use of the trash dumpster enclosure on city-owned property at 5919 Woodson. Mr. Reinstein.
Okay, thank you. Everyone's going to find my item on yours. I want to show you the aerial photograph.
Of course you did. What'd you put in our packet?
Page 29.
Okay, there. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So 5913 is the Historic Mission Theater building. 5917, I don't think it has a specific name. Both of them, I believe, had a shared trash dumpster right back here they're utilizing. And they're both utilizing the same trash hauler. That trash hauler canceled their agreement about a month or two ago because they couldn't get the trucks down the alley between the two buildings. And they're actually scraping up the buildings and doing some damage to the buildings. And then likewise with this alley, it's a pretty narrow alley.
What had they used before, Brian?
I think it's the same issue that, if you remember when the gentleman from Duffenbaugh came and spoke to us about a year ago, he said that they have a lot of new drivers, and I think these drivers are just inexperienced. So they're having difficulty getting these big trucks down through that narrow alley and being able to access that trash dumpster. They made arrangements for their tenants to utilize, I think, a trash dumpster maybe across the street, and that means having to bring the trash across. There were some tenants that were just allowing the trash to kind of pile up in the back, creating some nuisance issues. So our code enforcement folks talked with them about that. The property manager of 5913 contacted us and said, can we utilize accessing your property, the old Harleywood's building? I said, well, it's muddy. I don't think we're going to be able to get a trash truck across that. But kind of the compromise we came up with was allowing them to build a trash enclosure on 5919 Woodson, which is actually property the city owns. And then the trash truck needs to come down here, pick up the trash, and then be on its way. They would build a trash enclosure at their cost and maintain it. And then we would just allow them, the privilege of having that for a period of time, then access to it. We limited that to 2 years, and the reason why is because I think the question is kind of what we want to do with that property long term. We've had some internal discussions about possibly redoing this property into a city parking lot. I know there was a parking task force for Johnson Drive, and then a few years ago made some recommendations for additional parking off of Johnson Drive. This would be a good opportunity to kind of go through and rebuild this as a public parking lot. Something that's actually surfaced. It's kind of a grass area right now. I think it might be a utility that actually goes through here. So we could either removing the utility or moving it back, removing whatever's underneath here, resurface the entire lot, striping it, curbs, landscaping. Of course, that's a capital item. It'll take some time, thought, finding the money for that.
Technically, it's supposed to be used for parking right now anyways, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I thought there was a sign there.
Yeah, it's a public parking spot now, but it's,
Yeah.
Not very functional.
yeah, not most attractive, frankly.
Where's the community center? Right there?
Community center's like blocks over. So this is Woodson.
Can you,
Okay.
Jerry,
You know where the
if you want
keyhole
to,
is?
if you want to help Tom, yeah, show him where the keyhole is on there, that'll help him get his bearings straight.
Keyhole's right about here, Lamar's here.
Paying attention, Tom, or you guys just trying to show?
This is the trail that the city has, the Rock Creek Trail. And we own these two lots, these are three.
City market's right over there.
Yeah. This is the old Hardwood Woods building that we tore down last summer. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So I thought that the people that just right north of there also were going to also utilize
Yeah.
that.
So we'll enter a contract with both of these property owners.
Okay,
Then they'll build this at their cost, and then they'll utilize that
all right.
For 2 years.
for 2 years.
I would see a downside to that.
What kind
Be a
of,
good neighbor.
Yeah.
what kind of maintenance standards or,
They'll have
material
to,
standards are they gonna have to?
they'll have to build to our city codes.
Okay.
So it'll be an enclosed structure, or most likely wood.
Any other discussion?
Take it to council.
And Sam,
Consent.
She's scrolling down to the next item.
dude, you're up again.
Yeah.
Should we go to Matt?
All right, item number 6 is granting of an easement by the city of Mission to the owner of the property at 77 Martway, which is Panera Bread, to access across city-owned property at 7080 Martway, which is the old NEF property. And again, sorry, Scott.
The same story, a different spin on it. This area kind of outlined in the heavy black outline is the former Neff printing plant property that the city bought a few years ago. Came in, demolished the printing plant. Apparently, Mr. Neff had assigned an easement to Original Bread Company, who's the owner of Panera's, allowing access across his parcel, this particular parcel of property, construction of a drive, and a couple of parking spaces for himself and his employees. They, being Original Bread Company, is now in the process of selling Panera Bread to another large company that operates Panera Breads and different restaurants all over the country. And in doing the title work for the sale, they discovered the easement on this. So they have asked us to kind of originate that easement again to Original Bread, or probably to the new owner, for allowing the same conditions. It's okay, think about it.
Wait a minute, when we purchased the property, why is there an easement still in Neff's name?
Because the easement is recorded with the county, and it goes with the property,
Which went to us.
and allows for Original Bread Company to use this as access as long as there's Original Bread, or a Panera's restaurant here.
Right, but didn't that
So-
become null and void when
No.
we had got the property?
No. It goes with the property, it goes with the sale.
So who's buying that?
It wouldn't have to be, I mean, we wouldn't have to do it and the easement would still exist. It's just they made the request to clean up the records as they're doing the title.
They're asking us to be the
for this.
grantor now that we're the owner.
Any other anomalies on that property that we need to be aware of?
You mean,
Easements, other caveats to that contract?
no, I don't think so. We've known about this. This one we've talked about. It was part of our discussions with the Bridgeshore project and a number of other ones. So this one we've certainly been aware of.
Does that easement, if we sold that property, which we'd like to do that, but is that
Yeah, that easement.
gonna cause some problems then?
Yeah, that easement would go with the sale if we sold the property.
So the new owner would have to allow that easement?
Technically, or they have to go back and negotiate with Panera Bread or something else. Talking with the attorney that's representing Panera Bread, he's expressed an interest in buying this parcel, just kind of squaring it off. And I said, well, that devalues our property, that doesn't provide us access. He said that he would give us an easement across the property so that access could be provided to this. And they said, why don't you guys buy the whole thing? So we might be interested in doing that for a
Really?
price. Yeah. And it's a large restaurant company, so there may be some interest in one of their other restaurants building on that property.
So we offered that to the Salvation Army to buy that yet, or not? Or is it not big enough?
That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
No, but so,
For them.
you may recall that we, at one point had said, let's go out, let's use a broker and see what we can, or let's see if we can't sell this property. And then we sort of put the brakes on that as we went through to see what might happen with Salvation Army. Now that we kind of know that's not going to be a part of this equation, we've started those conversations again about what other options do we have for this piece of property. But I think cleaning up the easement in this situation moves that on down the road, and then we can have that larger conversation with Original Bread and anybody else who might be interested in that property.
Well, I'm just wondering if I bought the property, I didn't want them using that because I wanted that as my own personal.
Well, they're used for that, yeah.
Right.
They'd have to go back, the buyer would have to negotiate with Panera to basically
Pay off.
rescind the easement, yeah.
Wow.
So you couldn't have a separate little entrance into that property, the larger property onto Metcalf?
No.
So it's not allowed?
This would limit Panera, if there was no easement here, it's limited to one entrance, which I think might be an issue.
So explain to me, so when the Neff property owner
Mr. Neff.
sold the right for Panera to use that permanently, forever?
He granted an easement to Panera to use that as long as Panera's restaurant is there.
Okay. So Panera is going to sell.
But they're changing hands.
So they're not going to be, the easement's going to be void then?
They'll
It's
still be
just another
Panera's.
Panera.
They'll still be Panera's. There's going to be under different ownership.
And that's been forever as long as Panera exists.
Really?
He got money for that?
He got a couple parking spaces.
Oh,
Yeah. I think at a minimum, we could negotiate with them for easement. I'd like to remove this little circular things in the middle. You're familiar with that? That's kind of a hazard. I think they could probably clean up the lot again, like the other lot. It's a bit of an eyesore. I think they could probably go in there and pave it over, restripe it, make it look nice. Maybe for their advantage and for us too. In the meantime, they're anxious to get the easement so they can clean up the title work, get the sale completed.
So it sounds like it won't matter either way, whether we do this or don't do it, we still have the easement. So to do it, at least you got the good neighborly thing going where you can ask them to clean that up as part of granting that.
Yeah. We could negotiate with them for something more, clean it up a little bit. If they want to buy it, we can entertain an offer from
All
them.
right. So I'm all right with it.
Take to
Take it to
council,
council.
consent, non-consent.
Sounds okay with me.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're on the object of Panera's. Can I just throw in here that I would like the council or the city to look at the entrance into Panera's drive-through, because I think that's dangerous. I think somebody's going to get hurt. You can block up that whole entrance, you can't get out, you can't get in, and it's backed up down Martway. So I think we need to look at reconfiguring their drive-through.
All right, item number 7 is the 2017 Public Works Capital Equipment Purchases. John Belger.
I'm back. Our capital equipment for this year, for 2017, earlier in the year, we purchased our new wheel loader. We had originally budgeted $175,000 for that replacement. The total cost ended up being $122,000. So big savings there. I'm going to run through these items just briefly and just touch on a few of them, just kind of why they're important. First, we are looking at purchasing 2 mowers. Due to the contracted mowing services that we entered into in 2010, we've reduced our fleet of mowers from 8 to 4. And typically, we would not have that many mowers sitting around, but we are still responsible for some miscellaneous mowing. There are times where we'll supplement that mowing contract. There's been times in the spring where there's been a soccer camp or a wedding or something like that around the community center. We've had to go up and mow it just because the timing of when the mowers are here versus how tall the grass is. We also use them to mulch leaves in the parks in the fall. And there's been times, and actually a couple times here in the recent years, where it's stayed warm enough into the winter months that we've actually had to go out and give everything a quick once over to get it knocked down. So although we do have the mowing contract, those mowers are still important to our fleet. The second item is a Ford F-250 extended cab. This would actually replace one of the half-ton pickups. We're actually looking at moving to 3/4 ton trucks versus a half-ton, just because of the scope of the work that we do. That 3/4 ton pickup kind of fits our needs a little bit more. The F-450 would replace one of our small dump trucks. It is also used for snow plowing activities. We had originally budgeted $80,000 for this truck based on the cost that we'd seen in the past. In talking to our upfitter, American Equipment, for the plows and spreaders and the beds, we actually found a way to save about $8,000 on the setup of the plow and the spreader by moving from a central hydraulic to an electric spreader. So fortunate to see that cost savings there. And that truck that we're replacing is actually the truck that we set up at the community center, so they can use that to plow the parking lots when it snows, and kind of help us out a little bit and keep us out on the street. And then the final item is a air compressor for the shop. Our current air compressor is a 1984 model, same model year as I am. So it's been around for a while, and it's starting to see its fair share of problems.
Which one was
Just like but all in all, the total equipment replacement budget that we had for 2017 was $315,000, and currently, with everything that we had on the list to be replaced, we are sitting right at $242,000, savings of almost $73,000. So
Did you sell that old loader?
we did. Salvage company in Oklahoma came up, and he was happy as could be to have it. And liquidation-wise, the equipment that this is replacing, we'll Purple Wave that. We've had pretty good luck with our surplus equipment on Purple Wave, getting it on that site and getting it bid on. So.
I think this is an item we want to put as on the agenda, take it to council, but not on the consent, because we want to talk about the savings that
Sure.
we're realizing with our equipment over what we had estimated.
So we'll take it to council on the non-consent item. Is that right? Good, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. All right, next thing we have our discussion items. The 2017 mowing services contract renewal. John Belger.
I'm staying. Our mowing contract that we entered into, the current one was back in 2014. We had built in a renewal through the 2018 mowing season with increases not to exceed 3% annually, which is kind of your typical increase. This year we'd be looking at an increase of approximately $2,160 over last year's contract. We have not added anything new to that contract. There have been a couple of years where various locations have been added. No locations have been added. At this time, they mow approximately 60 acres in town, including parks, right-of-ways, facilities.
Is that on like a 2-week schedule, or how do you set that up?
There are different locations are broken out differently. For instance, like our facilities, City Hall, Public Works, Community Center, all on a weekly mow. A lot of the guardrails and right-of-ways are on bi-weekly, which is every other week. And then kind of your bigger KDOT right-of-way areas and things such as that are on monthly mow.
Do we get reimbursed by KDOT?
We do not.
No.
KDOT typically mows their right-of-ways once or twice a year. And previous council, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, established that we felt like, coming into our city, we wanted to make sure that those right-of-ways looked somewhat up to par and didn't look like we were getting ready to bail them, so.
Is this the same group, John, that does the yards, private yards that we put on their tax base?
No,
No, this is a different one.
yes.
Okay. Who does that one? Who
That
does-
is Bullhurst, our abatement contractor.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, this is Kansas Land Management. They started out doing our contracted mowing when we started this in 2010. They had the contract for 11 and 12. We bid the contract in 13, and another company got it. We had quite a few issues that year. At the end of the year, that company said, hey, we're not coming back. So in 2014, we bid it again, and Kansas Land Management ended up with it. I know that they do a lot of work for Water One and DeSoto School District. Udeki, they mow quite a bit of grass. Their shop's pretty impressive. DeSoto, they have walls of mowers stacked pretty high. That's pretty cool.
So, this is just off the wall, but if we had the mowers, how much man-hour time would it take for us to, because we used to do it, to do that mowing?
If I recall correctly, looking back at the hour tracking sheets that we had, we devoted approximately 2,500 hours a year to mowing. It was basically 2 or 3 full-time staff along with some summer help that went out and mowed 5 days a week. The thing that this contract's allowed us to do is take that time and reallocate it to other activities, mainly street maintenance and grounds maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to worry about the equipment as much either then.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Using mowers that much, we kind of have,
Sharpening blades all the time.
there's a lot of that, and regular upkeep and just the cost of keeping them going. Putting that many hours on a mower, we used to have those mowers on a 4-year replacement schedule. The mowers that we just discussed are on a 10.
Really?
We don't put that many hours on them.
We still have people that know how to do them, ride them, or they all retire.
No,
Okay.
no. We've got some folks that are,
And Anthony Avalulu out there. Yeah.
Do we ever put this contract out for rebid just to see, or?
we do. This last renewal we did on a 5-year term, with your annual renewal at 3%. So so through 2018, so in 2019 we'll rebid it just to get the updated contract.
Take it.
That's a discussion
Yeah, it's a
item.
discussion item.
It's just a discussion item.
Oh, well.
Just want to let you know.
All right, any other discussion on that? Okay, the next item, number 10, is EPC Real Estate Mission Trails preliminary site plan.
I think we skipped number 9.
I know you're trying to get rid of me.
Pardon me, thank you.
The streetlight maintenance contract, similar situation as the mowing contract. It's an annual update, or increase for streetlight maintenance. Black & McDonald is our streetlight maintenance provider. Black & McDonald also does all the regular maintenance for KCP&L. We've had this contract since we've acquired the streetlights back in 2013. Initial term ran through 2014 with the option to renew through 2017. So at the end of this year, we'll go out for bid again on the streetlight maintenance contract. But this discussion item is just to update you all on the 3% increase that we'll see for these services in 2017.
Do they go up and down the streets and look at them? Because there's a light that's on all night and all day on Horton and one on Beverly.
They do night patrol, so most of the time they're seeing the ones that are out at night. If there's one that's on all the time, let me know where they are. And
Okay.
I'll be sure to call them in.
Okay. All right, thank you.
What does the maintenance include?
It includes streetlight hits, severed cables, broken wires, relamps.
Not
They-
status?
No. They will cover knockdowns, so if a pole gets knocked down, they'll go through, they handle the insurance claim and all that, and do poles up.
Where are the aesthetics maintenance of the streetlights included?
Currently, the old KCP&L lights, we basically replace them as a project comes along and we get them replaced. As far as aesthetics, I know that a lot of those old KCP&L streetlights are in poor condition. For a number of years, those lights are on what's called an unexpired life term, which basically KCP&L say, lifespan of this light is 25 years. And the way that they deal with that is once that 25-year hits, they don't have to do anything to the pole. They basically just hit the reset button and you're on for another 25 years. So as far as aesthetics go, right now, we don't really have a program to address a lot of those issues. If there is an issue, we'd be happy to go look at it and see if there's anything that we can do about it.
Painting, is that what you would do if someone's looking really bad?
That's an option. What we've seen, and it was very evident along Johnson Drive when we did that project, a lot of those poles are to the point where the rust has gotten to them. Capital Electric guy called when they were taking them down and said, John, you need to come look at this. A lot of those poles are getting to the point where they're rusted through. So when that's an issue, we're not going to have another choice but to replace it because it becomes a hazard. But if you guys would like us to look into some sort of a way to address those aesthetics, we'd be happy to do that. Painting program. We can always
You can now volunteer for the one abroad, right?
Sure.
check out that.
I've been waiting for you to call me on that.
Yeah.
As the lights burn out, do we typically now replace them with LED bulbs or?
The way that we handle it right now, any light that is LED gets replaced with an LED, but
We shouldn't have too many of those going on, right?
lights that are still high pressure sodium bulbs, they replace whatever's there currently. We haven't retrofitted anything for a few years, but a few years ago we went through a retrofit process for Lamar, 55th Street, a couple other areas, and then a lot of these new lights that we're putting up with the projects, they're all LED. So Martway and Johnson Drive, and then Fox Ridge will be the same LEDs that you see along Martway.
I know they've got a lot cheaper. Is it worth it? Have we looked into what it might cost to retrofit some of those bulbs? Because I know it could save a lot of energy costs.
We haven't looked at any retrofits. Where we really see a cost savings is with these new lights that we're installing. These projects are actually metered, so you're paying for the actual usage. A lot of the old street lighting system was direct buried cable, and they basically charge you on a formula of, okay, it's this type of light, this much wattage, and, you know, it's kind of like another unexpired life formula. But that's how we get charged for those. And I think the real savings comes when you start metering them, because you know exactly what you're using. But we'd absolutely look for opportunities to retrofit. The last retrofit was a Mark project.
Just, if you had to guess ballpark, do you have any kind of rough estimate on what it takes to retrofit one streetlight?
I don't know.
That's fine.
I believe the retrofit that we did with the ones along Lamar and 55th Street was in the $120,000 range, and that was for the fixtures and the labor to change them out.
So we don't really have anything long-term to go ahead and do any retrofitting or replacement of any streetlights at this point?
Not at this
Except
time.
if it's a big street project.
Yeah, we've tried to be sure to lump that into, you know, big capital projects that we're doing.
Right.
Just when the opportunity kind of presents itself. Like I said, we did Martway, Johnson Drive, and now Fox Ridge will be installing those LED cover heads along Fox Ridge.
All right, anything else? All right, now, John, EPC, real estate, Mission Trails, preliminary site plan, Danielle Sitzman.
Thank you. So this is the last discussion item tonight on this agenda. This is really just an opportunity for me to give you a brief update. This case is coming to you from the Planning Commission with the recommendation of approval. They did pass it with several conditions dealing with deviations that were requested for the project. As you know, the project is, as you said, a preliminary site plan. They're proposing a 5-story mixed-use building containing apartments, retail space, and offices to infill the site that was formerly just offices. Two of the deviations, they requested two. One had to deal with height. They're requesting a 5-story building where a normally just limit of 3 stories would be allowed. They also requested a deviation for the mix of uses on the ground floor. The zoning district where this property is located limits ground floor uses to only retail, but in looking at the design of their building, EPC suggested that a better use of the space, not fronting Johnson Drive, would be for offices and or residential units so they could maximize the number of apartment units in the complex. Both those deviations were considered by the Planning Commission and found to meet the findings that were required to be made in order to allow them. Deviations in a planned district like this are part of the zoning tools that we use to allow for infill development to happen where there's constraints on the site and we might therefore get a better product for those deviations. So the Planning Commission, like I said, did find that the findings had been met and that it was a worthwhile negotiation to engage in. They did put a stipulation on the number of, on the retail along Johnson Drive. They said it was okay for the uses on that ground floor to be residential as long as the majority of the uses along Johnson Drive were retail and open to the public. And then there are some other conditions that they passed relating to final studies coming in for traffic and stormwater. Included in,
Yes.
Included in your information at your desk tonight are the response to some questions that we received from residents of Mission Square. They had an opportunity to meet with the developer on a couple of occasions and to submit questions to us for us to answer. So we've provided those to you and we'll provide them to them as well. Like I said, this will be coming to you on your next legislative agenda. Included in the action item are the rules for voting. I know Ms. Gibbs had asked what's your leeway, what's the number of votes required to take action on these types of cases. In this case, you can always approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission by a simple majority. You can override the Planning Commission's recommendations by a 2/3 majority, or you can choose to return the case to the Planning Commission for further consideration for whatever reasons that you may have at that point in requesting to do so. Anything else, Laura, that you think I missed? I will tell you, so the next step in this process, after this preliminary comes to you and it has a final approval, is for them to file a final site plan. I have heard from the developer that they were planning to file this month for a July consideration of that final site plan. They think their schedule has been pushed back a little bit further, so they're looking actually at a July filing for an August final site plan. That's the only other update I have on this project, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
2 planning commission members voted against. What was the rationale for the no votes?
There was quite a bit of discussion about the appropriateness of the retail component along Johnson Drive. I think that 2 of the commissioners thought that it should be completely retail along Johnson Drive, not just a majority. So there were some discussions there, and they felt they would vote against it just to voice those concerns. They really did not have a problem with the height, but it was more of the deviation for use.
So there's no other structures on Johnson Drive that are 65 feet high, are there?
Not yet.
And the disadvantage of that is what?
The-
Different than
the
Mayberry RFD. We just went to
Well,
that.
the Mission Bank building further on the street, that's gotta be 60.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
that one's taller, but it's not right on the street. There
Sure.
are some
Setback.
farther west, there are 10-story office buildings there, but they're not right on the street. Neither one of those examples are in the downtown district. Technically, the downtown district is Lamar to Knoll. The developer said they're asking for the additional height so that they can build a product similar to their other ones that we toured that gives them the predictability of their business model. They know that that works, so that's what they're looking to do, something that they know they've successfully done in the past, and that is a 5-story model.
Was there any more discussion about the parking? Do we think that's going to be adequate? It looks like from their other project, they were already a little bit overparked, and this
Yeah.
has even less.
There was some of the
parking.
discussion that we asked them to provide us their rationale for what they're requesting. Technically, this district doesn't require any parking. We know in this case with this much housing that didn't seem to make sense, but we didn't have another standard to work from, so we were asking for them to provide us with their anecdotal evidence, kind of some counts. They provided information, I believe it's in your packet as well, as far as the mix of units. So a 1-bedroom apartment versus a 2-bedroom apartment might have a different demand, it might have a different client in it. So how many cars are typically being generated by those. So their project, they broke that out. How many 1-bedrooms would they have, how many 2-bedrooms, and then yes, they think they would have sufficient parking and actually some excess parking too. They don't like to build extra parking when they're building a parking
Sure,
structure.
yeah, no.
So it's in their benefit not to overpark. We like to make sure that there's sufficient parking and it's not a wasted space otherwise as well. One of the things we're talking about in kind of our negotiations with them for development agreements is to secure some of that ground floor structured parking for public use. So that is still in the mix.
I know when we were at Mission Square, what was presented there was that the whole first level would be open to the public, is what they had said, but nothing installed.
Yeah, that is still about 50 ground floor parking spaces.
I'm really glad that the issue came out about fire and police, because I think that's something that we don't want to overlook that. Did Chief Lopez
Sure.
weigh in on this?
So what we do every time we receive a plan is we share those around with all those services immediately to get their plan review comments up front and make sure that they're aware of projects in the pipeline. I did also have a personal conversation with Chief Lopez about their ability to serve this building. They are aware of it. They plan out several years for staffing and things like that, and they have other high-rise buildings in Mission that they are prepared to fight fires in. So he was comfortable with this project.
So it's still going to be a wood structure versus a steel?
Right, it's a little soon for all of those details. Those are
Okay.
construction drawings that they would get to farther down the road, but yes, it sounds like it would be a wood frame structure.
Okay.
What he told us at the meeting, RC and I were there, and Laura was at Mission Square, is that the first level would be full concrete.
Yeah, they do a
structure,
concrete
and then we
podium.
would up on top of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
typical construction is a first floor concrete podium and then above that, wood frame. You could also do metal frame, but they've done wood frame in the past and that's their model.
Remind me, Lenexa, Overland Park, and Maine are all
Leewood.
5 stories?
And Leewood as well, yeah.
The 51st and Main actually varies, I think, from 5 to 8, depending on the side of the building. It wasn't consistent if I remember correctly, but the others, yes, were 5. Definitely the one at 80th and Metcalf, which is probably the best example kind of on the street, is a 5-story.
Any other discussion items on that? All right, Laura, do you have any staff updates? or-
I don't think so. As I mentioned, we did share the questions from Mission Square residents were provided from 3 residents. And so those have been provided back, and we've told them that they are welcome certainly to circulate those throughout Mission Square as they feel appropriate. And then we'll work to, it's a little bit overwhelming with, I think, 7 pages, so we'll work to try to pull out some of the more relevant questions that we think others in the general public might have and create an FAQ sheet for the project going forward. But no, other than that, I don't think we have any other department updates.
Any further discussion?
Can I ask a question? The tree and Countryside that is on the Shawnee Mission Parkway north side, has Countryside decided to do anything about that? It's totally dead.
I have not heard.
I spoke to Ken Davis, and I relayed to him that's actually KDOT right away.
Right.
And I have sent an email to the local office regarding that tree.
You think they'll take it down? Okay.
It's hard to say. I haven't heard back yet, but I talked to Ken earlier this week, and we'll follow up on that again.
Because it looks really bad when you drive in, it just sticks out.
Well, it's marked even, I think, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
I think he's got an X on it.
Oh. Oh, that's good.
Step 1, they know it's there, right?
That's a start.
We've identified the problem.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other business? All right, then that adjourns the community development.
All right, should we jump right into finance and admin? Trying to get out of here so we can understand.
It's like the first time. Maybe we should prepare like this now.
Okay, the first item we have tonight is the ordinance extending the Gateway CID districts number 1 and 2. And Laura and I spoke briefly before this. There's actually a piece of new business along with that. Laura, I don't know if you just want to explain that a little bit further.
Sure,
about-
let me go ahead and step through these, and then I'll introduce that new item. So we've been down this road before. There are 2 CID districts that currently exist at the Gateway site, and that was done in connection with the 2013 project, where you had the Walmart store that was paying 1 rate, and everybody else in the district was paying a 2nd rate. So you had kind of a staggered rate. CID districts go with the property. So we established the district back in 2013, and when you establish the district and pass the ordinance, you set an implementation date for that, and you communicate that date to the Kansas Department of Revenue. And so they update a tax publication that they put out on a quarterly basis for all retailers, and retailers have to go out and check that and update their systems. And so your sales taxes can only be implemented or removed at the start of a particular quarter. So we have, because of the delays in the project and a variety of other things, we have actually extended the implementation dates on the existing CID districts on at least 3 other occasions. Most recently, last summer, we extended them to October 1st of 2017, which still feels like it's a little way off, but because of the communication that's required with the Kansas Department of Revenue, they have to know by the end of the quarter, before the quarter that the tax was to take effect, whether or not it's going to happen. So essentially, we need to notify them by June 30th of any action or extension or termination of these districts. We had originally started talking with the Gateway developers because it is their intent, and I do actually have their new CID petition to create, at some point in the future, terminate the 2 existing districts and replace it with 1 district that encompasses the entire site and is 1 rate, which would be 1% over all of the properties. They're hesitant to actually terminate the existing districts before a new district is formed. it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation, but because the CID does go with the property, I guess they think it has, they were not to be the developers, or there's some value for them holding on, holding on to that for the future. So the property owner requests or petitions for the CID district. They also have to then make the specific request for extension and or termination. And so the city can't initiate that on our own. So if you think about if you got a CID district that was created, for example, and you had a project and you issued bonds, you don't want the city to be able to come in at some point and then say, oh, well, we really didn't mean it. We didn't really mean for that to go for 22 years, and so we're going to terminate it now. So that's why you do that at the request of the property owner as opposed to the request of the city. So the developer has requested that the implementation dates for the existing CID districts be adjusted to July 1st of 2018, and they've attached a letter to that effect. This is, again, is not an approval of any new incentives or any incentives associated with it. It just preserves the district. If the clock starts ticking on a district, you can't reset it. And so once you start the implementation, you start to lose time, and with no retail sales tax being generated on the site, then you lose the opportunity to repay. And sometimes that can repay for public improvements or other things that we want to see happen on the site as well. So they have made that request. We've prepared the ordinances that would extend those. Again, it's really a timing issue at this point. So we are recommending that we extend those implementation dates. If the council would choose not to do that and we let those districts go into effect, they aren't going to be generating any revenue. We could effectively come back at a later date and terminate them, and then consider the new district. So I'm not sure it harms anybody either way at this point. It's probably more of just a
I thought you said you couldn't terminate it.
we could terminate. So we could start these districts. They could start October 1st, no revenues generated, and then they could come back and say, well, we're going to terminate those two and create this new one.
Okay.
I do actually, as of about 5:15 this afternoon, I do have a new CID petition that reflects the entire district, the one rate. The first step, so the CID is similar without as many bells and whistles or hoops, if you will, as TIF, but the first step in creating or considering the creation of the CID district is to pass a resolution calling a public hearing on that new district. Then you hold that public hearing, and then you consider or take action on the creation of the actual district. So what I would suggest, if the council is comfortable, is we leave these ordinances in place, but I could then prepare the resolution calling the public hearing on the new district as a new business item for your June 21st meeting, and that would line up the public hearing on their new CID district with the TIF project plan. We've already called the public hearing for the TIF project plan for that same night, and so that would keep all of the component pieces of the Gateway project moving forward together at this point.
Is there any way to set it up so that we can, on the same night, dissolve the two existing CID districts and have a vote on creating a new one?
So, yes, potentially you could, on that July 19th, you could have an ordinance on that same meeting to dissolve the existing districts. Absolutely. And they indicated, and I asked them to indicate in the letter so that we could communicate with the public that it is their intent to terminate the two existing districts, which they did in their letter, but I think also calling the public hearing on the new district probably helps us communicate that even more clearly to the public about what the plan is for this.
Is there any concern with pushing this, the extension, to the July meeting?
Yes, because we have to let the state know. So essentially, if we push it to the July meeting, then we're going to let the district go. It becomes effective October 1st because we don't have enough time to communicate with the Department of Revenue. So June 30th is our deadline to say we're either extending or you're going to start these districts.
So June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
I I think we stop the clock, well, we stop the clock on this. I think we go ahead and leave these, I mean, reauthorize these until the clock doesn't start. As of Monday, we didn't have this information. I don't like last-minute information being thrown at us. I think we treat them as two separate events. We go ahead and keep these intact so that the clock doesn't start running on these, and then handle the new one. Because I'm afraid if something doesn't, our timing may get very perilous if something doesn't happen correctly. We could have a problem. So,
Yes. With the exception that, and so I thought about this before suggesting, is that this would, if we don't take the next first step, which is the resolution calling the public hearing, then you wouldn't be able to call the public hearing on the new CID application until the July meeting, which means the earliest you would be able to hold your public hearing would be your August meeting. And so then you've potentially separated the consideration of your CID and your TIF. So the next action really is just similar to what we did this evening for EPC, only that was on a redevelopment or TIF district. This is the resolution that sets the time and date for a public hearing on the community improvement district.
right, but you're talking about, we have two CIDs in place now, and the developer wants to create, eventually we're going to get rid of the two CIDs and create a new one.
Yes.
So I guess what I understood before I walked in tonight was we needed to reinstitute the two CIDs that are in place now, otherwise the clock's going to start.
Yes.
And the developer was not ready to bring forth his new CID proposal. I guess he did real recently, last couple of days.
Last couple hours.
Right. So I guess, are we planning on deviating from the original plan, which was to extend these CIDs, even though we know that they're going to get terminated?
No, I don't think the plan was necessarily to do that. I was asking that question. I'll be honest, I don't like the current CIDs that are set up there. It doesn't make any sense for the
Right, I understand.
project. So if there was some way that we could just handle it all at once, I think that would be nice. But if we have to move forward as separate things and look to call the public hearing, as well as in the next meeting, we would still vote on the extension date. Those are still a separated concern. I was just wondering if there was some way that we could lump it together maybe.
Right, and that question was asked Monday, and Monday, as of Monday, you said that they weren't ready.
Right.
And I've not found the reliability of the developer when he says he's ready to be really something you can count on. So I guess I'm a little concerned that if we take him at his word, something's going to happen and we're going to get stuck in the middle.
Well,
Does that make sense? I mean, am I reading it correctly or not?
I think we got everything. Well, you can speak to that, Mark.
so what we have, and we can move on to a different agenda item, and I can actually go print the CID. It's not signed, I have it electronically, but I can print what the CID petition looks like. It's about 2 to 3 pages, and it's just very simple. It shows a map of the district. It says the intent of the CID that they intend to charge, which is 1%. And then it really doesn't go into any of the in-depth calculations. That piece of it then will all be part of our calculations in looking at the overall incentive package and what would ultimately end up in a development agreement for the project. So I don't feel like there's anything that's not reliable in terms of the CID petition that has been submitted. In terms of, I feel comfortable moving it forward to call the public hearing on that.
So I think we're talking about two separate things then at this point. The first one is, do we want to move forward with the motion to extend the implementation date of the existing CIDs? And the second part of that would be, do we want to add the resolution to call the public hearing date at the next council meeting? So if we call the public hearing date in June for July, then we can vote on have the public hearing and vote on it in July. But in the meantime, in June, we would still be voting just to extend the existing ones.
Right.
Do you, just based on what you've seen in your conversations, is there a pro or con for going either direction? I mean, legally, the city isn't in any position to be harmed by extending it or leaving it like it is. Actually, the contract language dictates that Walmart was getting a separate amount, and Walmart's not even in the picture. That
Well,
contract's not even valid, so.
That's the problem I have with them. If you actually look at the district layout, it talks about height differences over certain parts of it. It's really, really
It's not even,
specific, so
Yeah, it wasn't
that's why
specific to
I'm not in
Walmart.
favor of
right, right.
I'm not in favor of
Specific
these
to the
existing at
footprint
all.
they were gonna be on.
So I think, in that case, I think what you would have to do if they were to have a project, or to look at doing, because I've asked the question too, can you amend, so if you had one CID district that covered the entire site, which is essentially what this new one will do, that was only at 0.5%, then can you just amend the percentage that you're charging? And our bond counsel, Gary Anderson, suggests you don't do that. You terminate the existing district and you start over again.
Yeah.
And so this reflects that, but I think this really clearly then communicates what their intent is. I mean, we can show the map, we can show their request, it's signed by the property owner. And, I think they may not be ready, we may not be ready on the 19th to make a final decision on the development agreement. It's going to depend on the financials. I also just saw a response from them today to Bruce Kimmel with financial information that he's been requesting from them. So that was a good sign that can allow us to start at least advancing those conversations in more detail. And I also got a signed assignment document, which we had requested back in December of last year, today. So I don't know if it was a good gateway day in getting paperwork off the desk, but I think
Did we happen to get any tax payments
we
too?
did not get a tax.
It's in the mail.
Yeah. Checks in the mail.
I mean, if things were rolling in the right direction, I would ask.
Okay, so what do you want us to do? The public hearing first?
Right,
So
so I think we'll start with this, move forward with the extension of the existing CID district implementation dates would be the first thing, and then add the motion to set the public hearing date for July. To establish the new one, and then I'm sure at that point we would dissolve the existing two that we're extending anyway, or voting to extend.
Okay, I recommend we take the extending the implementation dates for Gateway CID Districts 1 and 2.
That
Take it
goes
to
on-
council.
That goes on consent, right?
No.
I'm kidding.
No. No.
Public hearing thing then?
Well, I don't know, is everybody okay?
Yeah, I'm
Take it to
good
council.
with that.
All right, public hearing,
I'm good with that.
okay. Not on the consent. That's
It
public.
would be a new business item
Right,
since it didn't
right.
come through committee.
All right. The second item on the list is the ordinance repealing the transportation utility fee.
Yes, so as you know, back in April, we had a decision out of the Kansas Supreme Court that upheld the decision of the appellate court, determining that the TUF was illegal, so it's now appropriate for us to go back and repeal that section of our municipal code which establishes the transportation utility fee and talks about how it is administered.
Do it.
Do it.
I will tell you, I did hear from the attorneys at Lathrop and Gage on Monday. We do have a hearing actually set in district court for July 10th. I don't have a clear sense yet of whether we'll have a final answer on July 10th, but I've asked that they come in and make a presentation or give a litigation update to the council in executive session at your June meeting. So we'll kind of have a better handle going into that hearing on the 10th.
Right. And it'd be nice if our attorneys are armed with the information that the council has repealed that
Yes.
when they go into.
Absolutely, and the motion submitted by the plaintiffs is requesting repayment, at least for the plaintiffs.
At least that.
At least for the plaintiffs, and damages. So we'll see how.
Damages?
Damages.
paint software.
Yeah, the van is, probably, cover tags, they do have.
That go on consent?
No.
I don't think so. I think we better bring that one up.
Yeah,
Pat might have something to say. Just-
better air that one out.
All right, number 3 is an ordinance about the replacement of police vehicle or vehicles. Buying one or
Tom will like this,
Two
really
essentially.
fast. I know he wants to drive it. So, middle of last year when we got ready to do the budget, you guys know the white van that is sitting out there that has been here as long as I have, 20 years. They don't even make those anymore. And then there's also a gray 2006 Ford Taurus that every time it rains, it leaks in the window and the trunk. Last year, we had budgeted $55,000 this year to replace both of those. And at the time, the mark bid wasn't out, which is what we go through to get all the bids for what's the best dealership to get Ford Explorers or Tauruses or vans or trucks or whatever. We didn't know exactly what those bids were going to be when we did the budget last year. So we sat down this year knowing that we had $55,000. The command staff and I met, and what really does the police department need? We don't need another van and another Taurus. Really what we could use is sometime in the next 4 years, as much as Brian doesn't want to hear it, one of those Explorers is probably going to get damaged beyond repair. It usually happens sometime in a cycle. So what we have proposed is to spend $30,760 of that $55,000 on another brand new Ford Explorer police package, just like the ones that we bought. The only difference is going to be the only thing that will show that it's a police car is it'll have a spotlight on it. It is pre-wired so that when one of these vehicles does get damaged beyond repair, most of the equipment that's in it unplugs and plugs right into the brand new Ford Explorer that we have sitting in the parking lot. So instead of going through the insurance and everything else and us being without a car for 4 months, hopefully we're without a car for a week or 2. So we felt that that was going to meet our needs at this point. Those other 2 vehicles have been used for special operations, prostitution operations, surveillance, transporting drugs to the crime lab, training, travel, that kind of stuff. Since I've started here, we've actually seized some vehicles that we can use for special operations. And transporting drugs to the lab, I need a vehicle to be able to take people to training and stuff like that. And this backup Explorer does that for us. So at the end of the day, we would buy 1 vehicle, not 2, and it would save the city just over $24,000 this year by going that way.
Good job.
So,
How many Tahoes do we still have in the fleet right now?
right now you have 3. So in 2020, when we get the next fleet, we will keep 3 of the best Explorers that we have, and then the Tahoes will go away. And then we cross our fingers that in the next 4 years, if they don't change the body style of the Explorers too much, that all of the equipment that we currently have will fit in the brand new Explorers, assuming that's what we go with in 4 years. So, the 4 years is a long way away. So,
Chief, you remind me of my wife, the more you spend, the more you save.
Savings is great.
It's give and take.
It seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I've told you guys that there's wants and needs, and I would rather have a car that we can plug and play when something happens, because it will happen in
Makes a
4
lot of
years.
sense.
Because I don't like seeing an Explorer, or I'm sorry, a Taurus and a van just sitting there a lot, that bothers me. So I'd rather have vehicles that we can use.
So are we gonna sell those?
Those will be sold, and towards the bottom of the action item, yep, transferring the savings. The $24,240 goes to the equipment replacement fund, as does the proceeds from the sale of these vehicles. And if you hadn't heard, John Belger got us into the Purple Wave, the Ford Expedition and the Tahoes that we just sold. I think it was, Brian, just over $34,000 is what we got off of that. And we tried to sell it on the state website, and we got 0 people to call. So the fact that we got 34,000 and some change on the Purple Wave is.
Try to sell them as police cars. They take,
That's fantastic.
stripped off all the lights and equipment of the board.
Any questions?
Good. Take it to council, but not on the consent.
Yeah, I think we should discuss that one. It's a nice
Savings.
cost savings too.
What we do.
All right, discussion items, we've got some continue to review the general fund budget.
Yep.
So Laura,
Just very quickly, I'm going to kick this off, and then I'm going to sit down. We're going to try something that we haven't done before, and this evening I've asked all the members of the leadership team to give you kind of a brief overview and presentation on their particular department budgets and the services that they provide, and any challenges and opportunities that we see going forward. So we will run through those, and then if we can, our preference would be to hold questions to the end, because there may be some information as we've listened to them a couple of times in our run-through. There's a lot of information there. I reprinted the copy of the line item budgets that we distributed at the May 24th work session, thinking you may want to make notes as we go through that process. But if we kind of hold questions to the end, we'll take whatever time we need, and then I'll kind of come back and close with kind of where we see the outstanding policy issues left on the general fund, and then what the next steps are as we start to move into the capital side of our budget. So with that, Brian, we'll start with the general overhead budget.
I was asked to present the general overhead budget, which is kind of the department that's not a department. So we have in our budget as a department, but it's really kind of an opportunity to catch those expenses that are associated with a number of departments across the general fund operations. So, with that said, there are no assigned employees to this department, so there are no associated personnel costs. Some of our bigger contractual services include electric for $42,000. That's for this building and for the police department. Insurance for $55,000. That is our annual property and liability insurance. And a lot of those costs are spread through the budget for each department. But this is kind of a catch-all for some of the items like this building and police department, as well as vehicles. We also include a little money set aside to pay the deductibles on insurance claims that may come up over the year. Our finance audit of $25,000. That's the audit that was presented to you at the last F&A meeting that we had, Finance Administration Committee meeting. That is now complete. We are in the process of putting together an RFQ that we're going to issue later this month for those services for another 4-year period. We anticipate that cost will probably be about the same. Computer services for $50,000. That is our contract with Johnson County Department of Technology and Information for basically network support as well as help desk support for all the departments in the city, excluding the police department. They have the same contract, but their costs are separated out in their budget since it's a large department. Under commodities, maintenance repair of City Hall for $25,000. This is the general care and maintenance of this building as well as the police department. Includes the lawn services that John was talking about, his proposal earlier. Extermination, fire alarm maintenance, HVAC maintenance in this general care of the building. And finally, capital outlay. We had proposed $20,000. That would be for replacement of that second server. I presented to you all costs for the replacement of the first server. We went back and talked with the folks at DTI, and we're refining those specifications and working that number down. We'll bring that back to you probably next month. I think it'll be a much more reasonable amount, but we still want to set aside some money in next year's budget for the replacement of the second server. And then $7,000 for equipment replacement. That is the replacement of our mainline copier. That is a multifunctional device that provides copying, printing, scanning, faxing for pretty much everybody on this side of the building. The police department also has one, as well as community center, and both of those budgets reflect replacement of those as well. So we're going to do kind of a purchase of 3. Hopefully get a good deal on that. And then I print off a second page, but I didn't bring it with me. We have one last item down at the bottom of this page, and that is debt service. It's a little bit unique for this particular department. That is for our 2013 bond issue for the purchase of the streetlights that John was talking about for the McDonald and Black contract. I've been told that we realize $120,000 savings annually. We purchased our streetlight system from KCP&L. We had a debt service on this. I don't remember the date that I was going to get paid off, but it's fairly near future.
2023 probably, I think it was a 10-year issue.
10-year issue. I was asked to kind of talk about some sort of big picture needs that sort of pertain to the overhead department, if you will. And those are obviously, one is this building and the police department. It seems that the maintenance costs are going up a little bit incrementally every year. I think the original building was built probably in the 60s or 70s, and we've added on to it over the years. I was told the most recent renovation or addition was to the police department, and that was, I think, in the late 90s, is that right?
97.
97. We're starting to notice issues with windows that don't open and close properly. There's some rot around some of the window sills. The carpeting could probably use replacement. There's some other little issues like that. Kind of on a bigger scale though, this building is not ADA compatible, and that's a primary issue for us. It's also not sprinkled. Any kind of renovation that we do to this building, we'd have to meet new codes which would require sprinkling the building at a considerable cost. The police department just doesn't have the space, particularly in the locker room area. We have officers that are sharing lockers. We have some officers that are using kind of spare lockers out in the hallway. There's a server room downstairs that's very small. I've kind of talked to the police chief about maybe moving a wall here and there, but that would eat into somebody else's office space or an interview room. If we ever add staff up here, I'm not really sure, frankly, where we put them. Even just things like storage. We've had safety inspection done by the Department of Labor recently, and they went to our janitorial closet, opened that up. Of course, we have vacuum cleaner and all the things that are stored in there, but there's an electrical box in there. And he said that's a safety violation. And so I'm not really sure where to store that stuff elsewhere in the building. So there's just a number of issues like that that probably need to be addressed sooner than later. Those are probably one of the items that we'll address in our capital improvement program and present that to you later this summer. The other item is computer services. As I said, we have a contract with Johnson County DTI for support of our network. It's a general help desk. But that's really about all that service provides. We need technology, strategic planning. We've had a number of major projects that are pretty complicated that DTI has tried to take on. We appreciate that, but they have admitted to us, frankly, that they're in over their head. It's just, a particular project was the replacement of the mobile data devices in the new police cars. We ordered the laptops. We gave those to DTI, asked them to load the software on there, test it, make sure it worked. And that was just something they weren't used to dealing with. And that was all new to them. They tried to learn, but it became a very long, drawn-out process. And a lot of frustration on our end as well as their end. So right now we're kind of exploring options. It may mean scaling back that contract with DTI and looking for some other third party to help kind of provide those more project-oriented tasks, as well as some long-term technology planning. We've even kind of explored the idea of maybe asking you all possibly to consider bringing an IT support person on staff. So we're just sort of running through those ideas right now, kind of putting pencil and paper on those. But those are some of our long-term needs that we see probably coming in the next year or two. Any questions?
I have a quick one. We don't have a summer person this year up here, do we?
No, we don't.
We do not.
Next is our legislative budget, which is your budget that covers the work of council. It includes your salaries of the governing body that are set by ordinance. And one of the main focuses, of course, is public outreach to our residents and businesses through annual celebrations, meetings, supporting our boards and commissions and the works that they do. Interaction and involvement locally, metro-wide, statewide, and nationally is what you as a council are doing. And it is important that that happens and that you're able to continue to do that. Participating in a variety of meetings, events, conferences, mission as a seat at the table for a variety of initiatives, and you're able to bring back ideas and best practices to our city. Currently, we have 2 council members that are members of National League of Cities committees. That's Councilmember Kring and Councilmember Schlossmacher. They're able to discuss and share ideas on a national level, which again is very important. And the governing body serves as missions ambassadors for our city. And in addition to bringing back ideas to our cities, we have many opportunities to share some of the new ideas and initiatives that start right here in the mission. So that's important also. Some of the budget changes this year in the legislative budget is a slight increase in travel. We do look at that annually to see where conferences are located and how many people we anticipate attending. There's a small increase in the municipal organizations line item. Last year, the League of Kansas Municipalities changed their membership formula. They've not done it in many years, and so we did see an increase, and we've accounted for that going forward. We've also included funding for a possible governing body retreat next year, and that's included in the meeting expense line item. The expenses for the Sustainability Commission, Parks, Recreation and Tree Commission, and Planning Commission are now under the legislative budget. Previously, they were under the budgets of the staff person that was primarily responsible for those commissions. They do not have an increase in their budget. The farmers market budget also falls under legislative, and the newsletter budget expense for 2018, there is no expense listed associated with that. There was fund balance in the magazine fund for this next year. So that will cover that, but that is something that going forward may come back. Those are the highlights for legislative. Good job.
What's the insurance with public official?
Public officials liability insurance.
Just liability?
Yeah. So if you guys make a wrong decision, we get sued.
Good deal.
Essentially what it is.
So I'm covered is what you're saying?
Yeah. You're covered.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm here to present to you the administration budget. The department covers staff people that are primarily just right here in this building, including the city administrator, assistant city administrator, the city clerk, human resources specialist, our senior accountants, and me, the public information officer. Also the part-time salaries of our general city attorney and treasurer are in this department as well. The services that you see our department taking care of, primarily we serve the internal services functions. So our customers are certainly the public, but also our counterparts in other departments and those across the city with things like developing the budget each year, our human resources services, processing payroll and accounts payable, about 3,000 checks processed each year. Also doing business licenses and coordination with outside groups, kind of that liaison public relations role, as well as special projects, including support for the Communities for All Ages effort that we have happening in all the departments across the city, management and staff time for the farmers market, that sort of development, also the staff time for the Sustainability Commission, and the projects that come about as a result of those activities. I wanted to talk just about a couple of changes in the budget, including an increase in the employee recognition amount. We have our wellness program back up and running and wanted to give that ample support so that we could do a bit of enhanced programming in that area, as well as Brian mentioned the IT services. We feel like that, not reflected in this budget, but a kind of issue on the horizon in terms of bringing someone on that would have kind of greater familiarity with our needs and services and be here on site, familiar with what we do in a Also, the budget is reflected a change in our periodicals amount to reflect that change in the county mission post pay structure model that we've transitioned to in order to keep everyone informed.
Very good.
Municipal court. Municipal court, the staff includes 3 clerks, our judge who serves on a part-time basis, and the city attorney serves as our prosecutor, along with several assistant prosecutors. Court, we're really focused on providing excellent customer service and being as knowledgeable as possible regarding our court processes and procedures, as well as changes in state statutes that impact our court. We want to provide the most efficient services possible. Currently, we have 14 dockets a month. Our largest docket is on Tuesday evenings, where most of the routine violations are handled. And we see about 65 to 70 individuals at that docket, which is about a 60% turnout rate for those that are actually docketed to be there. In 2016, the municipal court's caseload saw a total of 9,445 traffic-related violations and 471 non-traffic violations, and our disposition rate is right around 86%. Last year, 1,309 warrants were issued, and we're about on track. Same this year, they issued 525 to date. Those that are paying their fines, about 13% pay online, which means that most are coming to court or coming into court offices to pay. So we see many, many people come through this building to take care of that. We also continue to work on translating documents to Spanish to ensure that those going through our court system have full access to the information that impacts them. We have 1 Spanish-speaking docket per month, and we do provide an interpreter at that docket. The budget changes for this year include, we've included funding for updated court software. Our current software is an access database that was developed specifically for us, but it is reaching capacity, and we definitely need a more sophisticated software that will really help us with efficiency. As we do that, we'll be checking with the cities of Olathe, Gardner, and Leawood as they initiate the niche police records management software. They'll be the first ones to get started with that, and so we'll be wanting to check with them to see how their court software is interacting with that, especially looking forward to potentially the police going to e-ticketing. We want to make sure that all of those work well together. A few cities have struggled with that a little bit with their court software. We'll also be working toward an RFP for that court software as we get to that point. ADA issues continue to be of concern with the many people that visit court. ADA issues were a driver for the previous space needs analysis. We don't have quite as many people coming to court, but it still is an issue for us. We've had some issues with that in court. So.
Good evening. I will be presenting the Public Works Department General Fund budget. The Public Works Department is responsible for maintaining city-owned facilities and infrastructure. The General Fund provides a budget for our day-to-day operations. The department focuses on delivering exceptional core public works services. These include maintenance and repair of streets, stormwater, parks, facilities, and fleet. Public Works is responsible for the maintenance and repair of approximately 110 lane miles of city street. Maintenance includes pavement repair, sign repair, snow removal, and street sweeping. In 2016, approximately 32% of our employee hours were spent doing these activities. Stormwater infrastructure is repaired and maintained by our department. Types of maintenance include routine cleaning of inlets and minor stormwater replacement projects. For 2016, this accounted for approximately 3% of our time spent. Parks and grounds are maintained by the department. These services include parks and grounds maintenance, trail maintenance, tree trimming, landscaping, watering, and weed control. This accounted for approximately 25% of our time in 2016. Public Works assists in maintaining city facilities, including City Hall, the Police Department, Public Works Building, and other city-owned lots. Fleet services are provided by Public Works, routine maintenance for Public Works, Community Center, and Neighborhood Services vehicles are performed by our department. This accounts for 25 vehicles or heavy pieces of equipment. The police fleet is maintained through contractual service. This accounted for approximately 9% of our time in 2016. The remaining 25% of the time was spent on other activities such as training or special events, and this also accounts for leave time throughout the year. Our top 3 contractual services, first is the traffic signal KCP&L lease, which includes the leasing of the traffic signal equipment and all the power to run it. This also includes the maintenance of these items. Is $378,000. That number has increased approximately 6% from year to year. The 2018 budget includes that increase. Our service contracts are second top with $180,000. This would include the mowing services, our locating services, streetlight maintenance, and fire system maintenance down at the Public Works facility. Third is $60,000 for streetlight power. This is power for all the streetlights citywide. Commodities, our top commodities, our first is salt with $55,000. As we discussed a little bit earlier, this is mainly driven by what kind of weather we have in the wintertime. It's a lot of times feast or famine. And our next 3 are all tied at $25,000. One is fuel. Again, this is kind of weather dependent. We see more fuel usage if we're out plowing snow a lot. That fuel cost will go way up. One of the benefits we've seen here lately is the cost of fuel has been down. Second one is vehicle and equipment repair. This is all the parts for all the maintenance and repair of our fleet that we do internally. And fourth is park maintenance. We increased this budget this year from $15,000 to $25,000 just due to a growing need, and trying to implement some of those items in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. For 2018, our equipment replacement will include the crack seal machine. Crack sealing is a big preventative maintenance piece in our street maintenance. That is budgeted at $50,000. There's also a skid steer trailer at $15,000 and the ice machine down at Public Works at $2,500. Our biggest challenge right now is staffing. As many of you know, 2016 we saw a lot of retirements, and we're still working to get back to the level that we were at, replacing those folks that retired. We've advertised, and we're continuing to backfill those positions. But staff is our biggest resource that we have, and in order to do a lot of these things, we have to have the staff to perform these services. So we're working on it. We'll get there. But that's been our biggest challenge here recently. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Remind me, how many retirements did you have?
We had 5 retirements and 1 resignation. We had Trey left and went to Edgerton, and then 5 retirements.
6 people left. How many did you hire on?
We have hired,
He has 3 vacant positions.
I have
out of
3
12.
vacant positions right now. So we've hired 3 back, and we're working through that. We've hired and fired, and had some not work out. So
Now that you're retired,
That's why I
there's a job for you.
Yeah,
Start another career.
that's right. I want to drive one of those big rigs.
come on down.
like to take a few moments to present to you information regarding the Community Development Department. Bear with me, this is a department you probably don't hear a whole lot about in your normal committee meetings, so my presentation is probably full of things that will go a little bit longer, but hopefully you'll find it useful. The general fund budget for Community Development Department helps our customers plan, build, and care for the City of Mission. We do this with 4 staff members here at City Hall, including myself as the city planner, our 2 neighborhood services officers, James Gorham and Neela Fanska, and an administrative assistant, Nora Tripp. As I said, our 3 key roles in community development are to plan, build, and care for our community. The planning functions of the department contribute to the shaping of the city as a whole and on a site-by-site basis. Planning staff is responsible for neighborhood and comprehensive planning through the maintenance of our comprehensive plan and special studies like our Safe Routes to School study. Administering the design guidelines and reviewing development requests, including such things as zoning changes and amendments like the sign code change, development site plans like the EPC project, and special use permits. We provide staff support and professional planning recommendations to the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, who meet monthly and review approximately 14 cases on average per year. Planning staff also provides project management by coordinating consultant engineers and architects representing both the city's interests and the development communities as those projects proceed to construction. Finally, we also administer the Business Improvement Grant, which provides grant funding to approximately 6 businesses or owners per year. Since its start in 2004, the Mission BIG has awarded over $390,000 to benefit more than 90 local businesses. These grants have also leveraged additional funds from those businesses to a total of about $1.2 million in total investment in the community. The building functions of the department primarily include administration of the building inspections program. Staff manages contracts for these services as well as reviews construction plans, issues permits, coordinates inspections, and enforces ordinances that ensure safe buildings. We also manage the updating of the construction codes. Over the past 5 years, we've issued over 350 building permits per year, coordinated 1,600 inspections annually for improvements to the built environment in our commercial and residential areas of about $15 million per year, with an average permit fee collection of about $150,000. The programs and activities of neighborhood services staff help to care for and improve neighborhood conditions in several ways. Our neighborhood officers proactively patrol the entire city on a weekly basis, identifying and investigating more than 500 code cases annually. The addition of a second officer has allowed each officer to focus on and become more familiar with the single territory. It has also allowed for increased attention to our commercial property enforcement and our sign code. 99% of our violations are identified are resolved voluntarily without involvement of the municipal court. This is accomplished by spending time communicating and educating property owners about code violations rather than simply writing citations, as well as using the other tools available to us, such as abatements and the grant assistance programs, which I'll touch on in a moment. Our rental program involves licensing all of the approximately 2,500 rental housing units in the city, as well as coordination and inspection of 5% of the multifamily dwelling units annually. That's about 215 dwelling units every year. The first time pass rate for these inspections is at about 98%. That's up from only 60% when the program first began in 2009. Neighborhoods are strengthened through capacity building programs and coordinated communication made possible by the various community outreach efforts. These include the neighborhood weekend cleanups, city recycling events, the 16-plaque community garden, customer service support that we provide for the solid waste hauler contract citywide, special animal permits and inspections for chickens and bees, and permits and special vehicles and equipment like RVs, dumpsters, and pods. Finally, a number of assistance programs are funded by the general fund in our department. These programs benefit Mission's households and the neighborhoods around them. These include the Community Rebate Program, which rebates a portion of city property tax, franchise, and solid waste fees to income-qualified households. This program typically serves 30 to 40 households in Mission, who each receive approximately $450 last year. It also includes the Mission Possible program, which assists income-qualified homeowners with up to $2,000 for minor home repairs, painting, and tree trimming. This program reaches about 20 households every year. Applicants might be self-selected or they might be approached by our neighborhood services officers to resolve property maintenance issues proactively or in response to those identified concerns. This program also leverages an additional investment of 25 to 50% as homeowners often contribute their own funds towards projects in excess of the grant award. Lastly, neighborhood grants provide small grant awards of $300 to $500 to neighborhood groups to start up or maintain their activity through newsletters, neighborhood social events, or other similar activities. There are a few changes in the budget line items I'll highlight if you're following along in the booklet. The first is the registration tuition line item. Currently, 75% of department staff hold International Code Council certifications. An increase in funding for professional certificate maintenance activities is requested to support these. The proficiencies demonstrated by these certifications have allowed our department to take over rental inspection services in-house. The engineering architect/planning services line is also maintained at a higher level. Much of this line item is actually recouped through application fees from developers through redevelopment activity, but we are proposing to maintain it at a slightly elevated level to allow for wrap-up of the comprehensive plan update. The public relations line item is increased to expand neighborhood weekend cleanup events. Currently we're doing 2, we're proposing to expand it to 4 per year, hopefully 1 per ward. The costs involved with these events are mostly dumpster rental and tipping fees as labor is provided by volunteers and coordinated through our neighborhood services folks. Funds are requested also for office furnishings. The proposal there is to make minor changes to the workspaces for our existing employees to improve the customer service walk-up experience in our main lobby, which is where we meet and greet many of our customers. Challenges on the horizon now and in 2018 include securing building plan review and field inspection services, as well as the software to track and support them. For the past 8 years, the city procured these services through an interlocal agreement with Johnson County. That agreement ended unexpectedly, causing us to scramble to find a suitable short-term alternative this year. We're currently exploring options to reestablish a stable, accountable, and cost-effective service arrangement for the workload we anticipate seeing in the future. This may involve an external contract, as such as we've secured for this year, perhaps another government interlocal agreement, such as we had with Johnson County, or in-house staff, or a blend of any and all of the above, depending on what services we think we can procure most effectively and to meet our needs. Second, expansion of the rental inspection program into single-family dwellings is currently under consideration. The draft proposal would add an additional 100 single-family dwellings to the already 250 multifamily units inspected yearly. Starting up a new aspect of this program would not only add these units to the inspection caseload and demands on staff time for scheduling and enforcement, but also likely require additional expertise in building systems, looking at single-family homes rather than apartment units. I think that concludes my remarks. I know we said we'd take questions at the end, but I'm happy to take questions now.
You mentioned a number, the grants over time period was $480,000, right? And you said there were 90 different businesses?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, since 2004, the business improvement grant, I mean, some of those businesses are no longer with us. So it's an ongoing, there were different rules as the program has kind of evolved over the years. It used to be you were only allowed a certain amount and we've changed the rules. But yeah, it's served quite a few businesses and now property owners as well.
Good job.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me the opportunity to share with you some information regarding the Parks and Recreation Department. This is the department that is responsible for the planning and administering of the recreational programs for Mission residents and the general public. The community center houses the majority of the recreational classes, programs, and special events. The programs and services are also offered at the Mission Family Aquatic Center and other outdoor park facilities located throughout the state. The Parks and Recreation budget is divided into 2 different divisions. One of those is the Mission Family Aquatic Center, and the other the Sylvester Powell Community Center. The department operates 9 months out of the year with 13 full-time employees and approximately 50 part-time employees. And the other 3 months of the year, we add an additional 100 part-time staff members to assist us with the operation of the Aquatic Center and the summer camp that accommodates 180 kids per week.
The Aquatic Center is in its 4th year of operation and is open the Sunday before Memorial Day till Labor Day of each year, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. from 12 noon to 8 p.m. In addition to open swim, the facility is also used by the Mission Summer Camp and Teen and Tween Camps 5 days a week, various daycares, kiddie pool playtime, tan and float, and the Mission Marlins for 6 weeks of the summer from 7 a.m. to noon. This summer, the Mission Marlins have over 300 members on their swim team, the largest to date. And again, this year we will host the MoCan Swim Championships in July for the 4th year in a row. We have seen great improvement in the hiring process for our aquatic staff at the Mission Family Aquatic Center, due largely in part to the approval that you gave to increase the wages for our staff to make us more competitive with our neighboring communities. So thank you very much for that. We do appreciate it. So also, as pointed out in our aquatics feasibility study, new attractions should be added to our facility every 3 to 4 years to maintain interest in the facility. We're looking to make that addition either as late as this fall or early next spring, which would be the second drop slide, which the plumbing and infrastructure was put into place for during the initial construction of the facility. As a result of the addition of the second slide, I think we can anticipate to see an increase in our daily revenue fees over the course of the next year as we see people stopping by to take advantage of that new feature. Also, in looking at the 2018 budget, we hope to reduce some of our expenses, primarily reduction in water usage, and it's not that we would actually use less water, but we would be billed differently for the water that we use by placing a second meter on the water that we actually fill the pool with and we use to irrigate the land with, and it's not a consumable product. So we also will look at and be evaluating this year and possibly recommend for next year a reduction in the number of hours where we would actually close earlier some of the nights during the week based on the number of it we have in attendance. We've been tracking those for the last couple of years, and there are some nights where we drop off and we really are only serving 2 or 3 people for the last hour or 2 hours of the night. The community center, which is open 360 days a year at varying times between 5:30 a.m. and 9 p.m., is used by members, daily drop-ins, class participants, and rentals. In 2014, the community center task force recommended that the center stair-step to a goal of 100% cost recovery. With that in mind, in 2016, our actual cost recovery was 87%. Our estimated cost recovery for this year is 93%, and we are working through the budget to try to present to you a cost recovery goal of 95% for the 2018 budget. Over the past years, we have seen a significant increase in our senior programming and special events, and specifically in our long-term rentals, those by Christ Church as well as the Stroke Foundation. Areas that we are anticipating some additional revenue in 2018 would be our rentals as we continue to explore or find extended contracts. We look with youth sports leagues for the use of gym space, civic organizations, and nonprofits. Also through our SPJCC programs, we are looking to venture into the adult sports league arena, which we have done very little of in the past. We look to expand on our youth special interest classes, and we will evaluate an increase in our summer camp fees. Areas that we're looking to make reductions in 2018 would include us conducting an energy audit. We have in the past evaluated all of the lighting systems. We've made several adjustments to that, say throughout the gymnasiums, the hallways, and in the natatorium, but we also want to take a look at those other energy functions that take place in the building and see if there are some savings that we can experience. And we would also be looking at adding a second gas or a water meter at the community center as well for water that we're putting out for irrigation. And As with the other departments, our professional staff members have a required number of CEUs that they must maintain on an average or on an annual basis, so you will see some increases in our travel, lodging, and registration line items to reflect this need. And then lastly, just to touch on parks for a little bit, we are looking at rolling out that master plan, so hopefully what you're going to see coming down the pipe is in addition to the trash receptacles that we've placed in our parks, we will see some maybe some new entrance signs, some wayfinding signage, some additional picnic tables, park benches, and if possible, maybe secure some grants to assist us with replacing some playground equipment. So I'll go ahead and let Chief wrap up and we'll take questions. Thank you.
I've only got 11 pages, so kidding. We're going to talk tonight about the police department, the divisions, some of the programs that we have, and where a few things are, just to kind of give you guys an update and we'll answer anything that you have. As you guys know, the police department's made up of 29 sworn officers. You know most of the officers downstairs, except for the ones that work midnights. They come out occasionally. We have 2 records clerks, and then you guys know Wayne Brinkley, who does court security and works at council meetings sometimes too. So we have 3 divisions. The first one is staff support, which is Captain Malloy, and that division has run with 1 person in it for a very long time. And there's one thing that I always thought about is what happens if Dave leaves or Mark Sullivan leaves and you have 1 person that knows all the information and they leave. So we rotate a sergeant every 18 months to work with Dave over in staff support to learn everything that Dave knows and pick all that information out of his brain. So staff support manages the records division. They also do all of our contracts and all of our IT work and coordinates with ATI that Brian talked about before. But their main function is they make sure that everybody else in the police department has everything that they need to do their job. If Dave and Kevin fall down, then the department falls down. So that's why we need 2 people over there. Investigations has Captain Madden, Detective Paul Mary from New York. Nobody can mistake him. We have 1 detective, and then we have a rotating spot in detectives where we take a patrolman every 12 to 18 months to give them the experience back in investigations, and then we kick them back out on the street, and then they know what it's like on the backside following up on these, and then it gives us a better person out on the street because they know what it takes on the other side. So we're in the middle of that right now. What they do is they manage to follow up investigations on reports that patrol takes. They also engage in proactive operations and trying to reduce crime. We talked earlier about seized vehicles and prostitution operations and stuff like that we do. Some of the stuff that Captain Madden handles that you guys may or may not know, he does oversee the daily operations for Northeast Animal Control, which he did not used to do. Does all of our emergency management stuff, preparing for tornadoes, and that's probably why we get the stuff about, hey, there's a storm coming from Dan all the time. And he also does all of our internal affairs, which is not a very fun job to do sometimes. So the last one is the patrol division, the guys that drive the cars on the street, headed up by Captain Kirk Lane. Everybody knows Kirk. He has 3 sergeants, 3 corporals, and 15 officers on the street. Right now he has 14 officers on the street. As you guys know, Officer Bullitt left, and we have a certified officer from Missouri who's in field training right now. So hopefully within the next 9 weeks, hopefully he'll pan out and be out on his own. Some of the things that they do, they respond to about 10,000 calls a year, which is a lot for 2 square miles and 10,000 people that live here. So 923 fight calls last year. It's about 2.5 fights a day in the city. 8,888 vehicle stops and car checks. That's suspicious cars in the parking lot, a Cat Fed, or an apartment complex, or we stop somebody for speeding. We had 807 fire and rescue calls in this city last year. Every time that fire goes out and med and goes, whether it's a patient transfer or somebody's choking or a heart attack, we go on all of those. So there's 807 of those. 30 attempted suicides last year. We had 0 suicides that were effective. I can't say that about this year. So the fact that there were 30 attempted suicides that didn't make it last year, that's good. 353 vehicle accidents last year, 13 death investigations. We treat every time that we get a call about somebody who's passed away. If it was unattended, we treat it like a homicide and we work it backwards to show that it wasn't. Most of you have gone through the Citizens Academy and heard that stuff. And then we also arrested 1,123 people last year. So, I mean, you figure that we're arresting over 3 people a day in this city. And every shift runs with a minimum of a supervisor and 2 officers on duty. So when you figure all that stuff, some shifts you answer 2 or 3 calls, and other shifts you run 20 calls. So you just never know. I personally have 3 visions from this department from when I took over almost 3 years ago, and 3 years ago this month. Competitive salary for the department. The city is moving forward with a salary compensation study, and I'm very glad to at least see that we're doing that. So ensure the police department structure is functional and adequate is number 2, and then the third one, this department has gone outside for chiefs and supervisors and stuff like that in the past. Even after I'm gone, I care about this city and what happens to this department. And it's my job to make sure that my vision is that the people that are downstairs, I give them good training so that when I leave and I retire, that there's people to backfill and fill those seats. So that's my job. So, you guys approved a project last year, Johnson County Mental Health Co-Responder. That person is close to being out of training. After all this time, there's some problems with trying to find the right fit. You want the right person in that spot. There are 6 other cities besides us that signed on with this program. She's based out of Leewood Police Station. It's 40 hours a week of frontline mental health coverage. There's 2 other cities right now, Olathe and Overland Park, that have this program. It reduces the number of calls that we make to somebody's house. In some weeks, we go 3 times, 4 times to somebody's house. It reduces the number of calls. We're also not taking people to the hospital as much. And sometimes people need mental health as opposed to going to jail. So that's what this program does. And I will tell you that her training should be done in about 2 weeks, and then she'll be out there responding on calls with us. So that's very good. It's a yearly contract, and we'll see where that goes. Dare community events. You guys know that the Mission Police Department is one of the only departments left. I think there's 2 others in Johnson County that teach Dare. We teach at both grade schools. The community events that we do through the department, we don't have a community officer. It's everybody that I just talked about from all those divisions, everybody pitches in and does it. So the Tip Cop Special Olympics is housed right here in Mission, Coffee with a Cop this Friday, by the way. The Dips and Sips ice cream event, Shop with a Cop. This year there'll be 3 grade schools that we do. Ride to school in a police car. We also do cookouts with Public Works and give tours of the station. The fire department comes out. We do that for all of the Mission summer camp kids. All 180 of them get to come for a day and run around, and they like to get locked in the cells. So we do the police academy. Most of you have attended that. There's other events to include the city picnic, where the department gives the kids footballs, wooden airplanes, slingshot missiles that were flying around last year, and flashlights. That's this year. So the kids are going to be running around with Mission Police flashlights this year. In July. And I did want to tell you that some of these events are sponsored by mission businesses that believe in public relations between the community and the police, which is always important. Training. So officers are mandated for 40 hours of training through the state. Without that, each year, we don't get to keep our certification, which means we're not policing. So we host FBI level classes, and we go through Christie in the Community Center, and we get to use that for free. And by doing that, we usually bring 2 to 3 classes a year. Seats for these classes are about $600 to $650 a piece. The last class that we hosted just a couple months ago, the city saved $2,400 by us being able to do that. And the officers are getting frontline FBI level training. Plus these people go, and there's 50 of them in each class, and they go shop and eat Mission, which is great. So we also have 1 commander, Captain Madden, that's on the FBI National Academy list, hopefully in 2019. We've also identified some command schools that are held in the Kansas City metro area, and we did ask for an increase in the budget for training this year of about $4,000 to send either another captain or one of our advancing sergeants to a command school to make them better for the future. As I discussed earlier, vision and goal of mine is ensuring that we're prepared for our future, and that's one way that we do it. So. I don't know how many of you may have heard about this, Northeast Animal Control. Laura and I talked about this earlier today. The city of Roland Park, within the last 2 weeks, emailed us to let us know that they're exploring other options and may not want to continue the Northeast Animal Control. So we met, and I went with Madden to the last Animal Control Commission meeting, and Laura and I met with some of the city administrators last week. Everything ranging from Roland Park is interested in having Critter Control come out and take the animals that need to be picked up, and their police officers run all the calls along with code enforcement to begin with. So they're looking to go private. Some of the other options have been, Mission is exploring whether or not we go with what's called community service officers, and I'll get to that in a second. And then we would contract out with some of the smaller cities. And the other option is there a way to revamp Northeast Animal Control and keep it, which is another option. So what we did here is that recently, over the last 2 days, Prairie Village, I did contact them about giving quotes to all the different cities to see what they would charge. And Prairie Village said that they don't feel it's in their best interest. They have community service officers and they're worried about the call load and what that might do to their residents, and they need to be concerned about that. So the next meeting is June 20th, where hopefully all the cities are going to get together and throw their ideas out on the table and see where we're going. So, but Laura and I have been working with Dan Madden and the commission on that. So we'll see where that goes. The last thing is we just talked about community service officers. Laura and I have talked about this for the last few years. Some cities have these, some don't. Shawnee has something similar to what we'd be looking at. Essentially what they do is community service officers are not police officers. They go through CAPERS and not Kansas Police and Fire Retirement. Their pay structure is a little bit lower than what police officers are. But what they could do for us is fingerprint requests here at the station, walk-in reports. Somebody comes in for a fix-it ticket and their tags were expired. Well, we have to call an officer in or pull a commander or a detective off of what they're doing to go and see if their tags are actually renewed with a sticker on it. They go out and they direct traffic at accident scenes, so I'm not tying 2 officers up, I'm only tying the one up that's taking the report. They can actually direct traffic. Parking enforcement. Right now, when we have to take a car out to KCOM, it's captains and sergeants. Sometimes the chief that's helping to shuttle those cars, they can do that. They can run drugs to the crime line for us. So there's any number of things that they can do to alleviate what the officers are doing on the street, and they're doing all these things right now. And by having those positions here, if something does happen with NEAC, they can also do animal control. So it's an option that we're looking at, but we at least want to let community service officers work. So, and that's it. That's 11 pages really fast.
What is the major issue with Northeast Animal Control that people want to get out of it?
I will tell you that what I heard from Roland Park is that they're upset with the coverage. I will tell you that 75% to 80% of the calls for service are handled by animal control. So the Mission Police Department, my officers ran 122 animal calls last year. And that's about 25% of the total calls that Mission got for animals last year. So that is spot on. We have 2 full-time animal control officers right now. Plus, Brandon Loomis is here on Saturdays. But from about 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon until 6 o'clock Monday morning, there isn't anybody. But most of the animal calls that we get are during business hours during the week. So animal control is covering about 75% of the calls that we get here in Mission. So, and I believe our fee this year was about $77,000 is what Mission paid into that. So, but I believe that they want more coverage and they want to pay less money. I've heard that from a couple of cities that
I would flip that priority. I think they want to pay less money because, I mean, if you heard what the chief said there, the model that they're looking at is to go with a private contractor and then let their police officers pick up all the extra,
Right.
which is what they've said their frustration with Northeast Animal Control has been. So it will be interesting to kind of see where that pans out.
For $1,500 a month, that's what they're saying is going to be the first year. That company can.
And that's to
So
deal,
one
as
is a year
we
by year
understand it, with
contract.
dogs only. They won't handle any calls related to cats or, other things. So there's potentially a real change in service for them, but.
Everything
So
has
the problem is if they pull out, then all the rest of the city's cost goes up, and then everybody starts looking at what they can do to save money, so.
Well, and we've identified, we are comfortable that there's enough reserve and fund balance in the Northeast Animal Control Commission's budget, that if Roland Park makes a decision to leave in 2018, there would not be a dramatic increase that would be passed along. It would force the conversation for the future, but we wouldn't have to hit all the other participating communities in that 1 year. We still have some time to sort of really be able to evaluate those kinds of issues.
Assuming you could choose your officers.
Yes, assuming, there are a whole lot of other issues along with that,
Right.
and that's, when I called the meeting and asked the other city administrators to participate, I said, what we need to really be cognizant of is Northeast Animal Control is an employer, and you have employees, and you have to be very sensitive to how you're handling these conversations about whether we're going to exist next year or not, in fairness, in fairness to those employees. Because if it's in limbo, if we lose an employee for whatever reason, how do you recruit to an organization that may or may not be around, the next year? So I think we had a good conversation with the other city administrators last Friday. And I think, I think it's time. I think it's time to maybe make some changes to overall to the way those services are delivered, but I think there's a way to get there that could benefit us all. I'm hopeful of that. Other questions? And I don't know if everybody wants to pull up chairs. Any other questions based on things? I hope you heard at least something tonight that was new or interesting or, kind of
Very good.
what
Yeah, I like this.
we would like to do kind of a similar format for our community dialogue. So let me just kind of hit on a couple of the high points as we wrap this up. As we talked about the last time, we do think, based on the formula and the property tax lid calculations, we are going to be able to hang on to all of the growth in our assessed valuation, which is a real positive. I think one thing that you will see us include in budgets going forward, in the legislative budget, is we will plan to budget for an election every year, so that in the event that we have an issue or a program or service that we can't capture under the growth and assessed valuation, and we need to go to the voters, we have that budgeted every year to do that. So I think, some of the common themes that you hear as you go through this, and they're not surprises to anybody, the building maintenance issues here, both from a functional and efficiency standpoint and just a general maintenance. And so we struggle with spending money to replace rotted windows without knowing, what the long-term, really the best use of this building is. The ADA issues, for example, so we did a space needs analysis several years ago that, as Martha mentioned, was driven by the numbers of patrons coming through the court system. And those numbers have balanced out for a variety of reasons, but we still have some of those underlying ADA issues and just, functionality issues. The locker rooms downstairs, as I think Brian mentioned, we talk about salary being one piece of the recruitment for our police officers, but if you don't even have a locker room or you even have a locker to put your gear away, is that an attractive work environment for folks? And as we look at evaluating things like bringing IT services in-house or bringing plan review and building inspection services in-house, we have dollars. As we do that cost-benefit analysis, we often get hung up on even if it made sense from a dollars and cents perspective to bring that position in-house, where would we physically put that person? So I think, it's time for us to probably get really serious about looking at what's the best plan for this building. We do have some ADA funds. There's an ADA fee that's a part of all of our citations that go through municipal court. We've built up about $100,000. That's certainly not a lot of money, but maybe really time to start putting that plan, something more strategic together. It may be time for us to go back and reevaluate the purchase of our traffic signals. We talked some this evening about our streetlights. We did an analysis at that same time about purchasing the traffic signals from KCP&L, and I think John touched on it as the single largest contractual line item in his budget. So maybe worth our while to go back and look and see, does that make sense for us to purchase those as well. I think, Ben touched on the number of fire and medical calls. And, at this point, I don't know that that's impacting our ability to respond to law enforcement calls for services, but that's certainly a trend that we're going to need to continue to watch as those type of calls increase, and we're dedicating our officers. That makes them unavailable for other calls in our city. The other things that are included, I'll just recap from the last meeting that haven't changed. Oh, and I do want to talk about, because I think we did present, back on the 24th, we threw the community center budget out there with a cost recovery of 83%. And what you heard Christy say tonight is, our goal is to get that to 95% cost recovery by the time we wrap up the 2018 budget. Just since the 24th, we've closed that gap from 83 to almost 90%. So we're making that progress. We want to be very deliberate in that, and we want to be very conservative in that. I can inflate revenue numbers and lower expenses, and if we can't actually meet those, it looks good on paper, but it doesn't really accomplish anything. So we are committed to that. I will tell you, one of the things that Christy and her staff did last year that they hadn't had in the past is they use a cost recovery planning sheet for every program or service that they're bringing online. So they actually work through on paper their anticipated revenues and their costs, and anticipate what their net revenue is expected to be. And so it helps us in a different way take a look and say, sounds great, but how much money are we really going to make for the effort or the space that it may take up in the facility? So look forward to kind of continuing to develop that. I haven't heard, would be interested in thoughts on, we have still included the subsidy for the solid waste contract, for the residential contract. That's about $85,000 in the 2018 budget. And as we talked about the last time, there is a rate increase with that contract with Waste Management. And so we would continue to cost share with the residents, but they would see an increase of slightly over $6 a year if we pass that along to them. Keeping those other franchise mill rate rebate programs, big programs, Mission Possible programs in place to reach out and help our residents. The big piece, and I think we will be very close, is this classification and compensation study recommendation. When we hired Austin Peters, their deadline was June 30th, and we will be that, I think, we're at the point where I think we're ready to come back to the council with some preliminary results and start a conversation about compensation philosophy and where we want to be. And I think our goal is, and I think it will be doable, is to be able to implement those recommendations, hopefully within a one-year budget period. Capital equipment, I think as we talked about, we were trying to continue to build that equipment replacement fund. This year is a very light capital year for us, but we will have some very significant capital expenditures in the next 2 or 3 years, including the replacement of the radio system in the police department. So trying to create some cushion or the ability to absorb some of those peaks and valleys in the capital equipment replacement, as well as trying to maintain or keep that fund balance as close to or at your 25% fund balance goal. What are we missing? Always, right?
Laura, I'd like to just throw out, I was looking at the budget for the farmer's market, and I think this is our 3rd year. I think we need to really sit down seriously and talk about that farmer's market. I think we need a permanent location. I think we need a permanent structure. When I was down there Saturday, I heard all kinds of feedback from different people down there. And I've talked to other people who grow vegetables, but they don't want to come because we don't have a permanent structure. And I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. And I don't think we're doing it. I think we need to really sit down and discuss whether we want this farmer's market or not. And if we do, then let's budget for a permanent structure or talk about one and see where we can put it.
And the design strat results, the architects will be here at the beginning of your July committee meetings to show ideas about a way to settle in a little.
Well, I just saw $10,000 and I thought that's not going to cut it for 2018.
No, there's not a capital request in there.
Yeah, we need to really discuss a permanent structure because it's just not going anywhere right now.
Make sure you show up for that July meeting.
Do I have to?
Yes, we're going to discuss it. I really liked that, that whole
Yeah,
departmental.
did good.
Yes.
Very good.
And Ben Hadley, where are you? You didn't-
Hi, I'm in the back.
You were talking about all the things the police officer did. My gosh, we couldn't do the family adoptions if it wasn't for the police and public works, so you need to have that.
I left that, hold on, let me come back.
Page 12. Well, I certainly, one of the things I appreciate most about this group of folks is that, there's not, their departmental budgets are not, we don't have turf wars over that. Everybody, we have a great opportunity to kind of talk and share and balance priorities and projects and flexibility, and that doesn't happen everywhere, so we're very fortunate to be able to have that here. Our next conversation around the budget would be tentatively scheduled for June 28th, which is a work session on the capital improvement program, which is our stormwater, parks, and streets agenda items. Including, I know you had previously asked for looking at some different funding scenarios for some of the larger street programs with potentially some debt options for that, so we will provide that as well.